survival horror game for the Eternity motif. Studio has taken on the great responsibility of not only making the beloved classic back from the dead, but by re-releasing the 2008 classic, we recently got our first real look at the game with EA and Motive. The studio released a first gameplay trailer and followed it up with a lot of new gameplay and story details. The signs are promising, and we'll go over a few of those new details here to stay true to the original, as Square Enix and Capcom have shown us in recent years that remakes that deviate from the source material can be very successful, but it doesn't look like the Dead Space remake will go that far. The studio has repeatedly stressed that the game will stay true to the original, especially in terms of the main story and moments. Ducharme quote, "So the foundations will remain the same," quote, and creative director Roman Campos Oriola adds, "We want the fans of Dead Space. We want Dead Space fans to rediscover Dead Space as if it were the first time, but for everything to feel familiar and recognizable." That's something that's really important to us. The most significant change is that unlike the original Dead Space remake, Isaac Clarke will be a voiced protagonist. Gunnar Wright, who voiced him in Dead Space 2 and 3, will reprise the role, while the Motive. The studio has also taken extended lore and narrative elements from Dead Space 2 and 3, as well as the Dead Space comics, and inserted them into the original story. Secondary characters will also play a larger role. The studio says that some characters who only appeared in audio logs in the original will now actually be seen on screen and play a more prominent role in the story, such as Dr. Elizabeth Cross, a gardener who attended the USG Ishimura, while more important characters from the main cast like Nicole have also been given a bit more background and plot opportunities, which come in the form of a whole new set of narrative side quests. Other new content beyond the story additions we've already talked about also add some new things to Dead Space on the gameplay front. It's already been confirmed that the game is making significant improvements to the Zero-G sections, paths and new environments with new challenges. You can also expect more new runes, routes and obstacles. USG Ishimura's visual improvements are somewhat obvious, but still worth mentioning because the game simply looks beautiful. We've only seen a few minutes of gameplay from the Dead Space remake so far, but it clearly looks like a massive visual improvement over the original motif. The studio says that every single element of the game has been redesigned from the ground up using the Frostbite engine. This includes radical improvements to lighting, shadow effects, animations, details, environments and models, volumetric fog, and more without camera cutscenes. UI and elements like adjustments and upgrades were, and the remake takes the next logical step. It's been confirmed that the game will be a single sequential shot without any camera cuts a la God of War 2018. And that means that the entire ship is interconnected and doesn't load at all, unlike the original, which also means that you can return to previously visited areas to pick up things you may have missed. In addition, there are improved UI map controls and an improved locator. Chopping and peeling. Chopping was a crucial part of the original Dead Space, and that will of course be the case in the remake as well. In fact, this aspect of the experience will become even more prominent. Motif Studio does this through what it calls the new peel system, according to EA. The peeling system introduces layered flesh, sinew and bone that break, terror and shatter in shocking new ways, and quote, apparently it can also be used in pretty creative ways, quote, while strategy is key, there are also more opportunities for creativity. Shred the necromorphous flesh with the pulse rifle, shoot a ripper blade through its arm and leave it hanging from the companion, then use your kinesis to tear it off and nail the enemy to a wall, end quote. The peeling system will also make combat feel more dynamic and strategic, according to creative director Roman Campos Oriola. Quote by Roman Campos Oriola, when you start shooting, you see the skin and flesh being ripped off the enemy's body, and then you see the bones underneath, and then you can cut through the bones and sever the limbs and so on. It looks great, but it also gives the player direct feedback on how much damage they're doing. Dead Space is justifiably one of the creepiest survival horror games of all time, offering a near-perfect blend of jump scares and atmospheric horror. The remake takes it a step further by throwing some uncertainty into the mix with what it calls the Intensity Director. Describing what exactly that is, EA quote, Motive has developed a new Intensity Director that dynamically adjusts what appears in Isaac's path, from necromorph spawns and how they attack them, to environmental effects like lighting, smoke particles, and sounds. Isaac's heartbeat, breathing, and exertion also adjust to his stress levels to give you direct feedback on his mental, emotional, and physical state. PC requirements. Considering how stunning the game looks and that it's a current-gen exclusive title, it should come as no surprise that the system requirements on PC are pretty hefty, even if you use the lowest settings possible. Dead Space requires either a Ryzen 5 2600X or an i5 8600 along with either an RX 5700 or a GTX 1070 on recommended settings. You'll also need either a Ryzen 5 5600X or an i5 11600K along with a Radeon RX 6700 XT or a GeForce RTX 2070 on both settings, 16GB of RAM, about 50 GB of free storage, and DirectX 12. More and more games with a $70 price tag have hit the market in recent years, and unfortunately it looks like Dead Space will be one of them. PS5 and Xbox X and S it'll cost $69.99, which will cause a stir especially for a remake. Even though it looks like it's a pretty enhanced experience on PC, it'll still cost $59.99, which should cause even more of a stir. That's all for now. If you enjoy what you saw, please hit the like button, and if you're new to the channel, now is a good time to subscribe. We upload brand new videos every day. After subscribing, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bark icon. Thanks for this video, and we'll see you next time here on Gamage Facts.